Hey guys, welcome back for another quick message on this particular platform. And as always, I am grateful for you guys taking the time to subscribe, the subscribers, and receive those notifications when new messages are released here on this particular platform. And so as always, our verse of the week is none other than Isaiah 49:16, which is a reminder that we are in our Father's hand. He keeps us in his palm. He keeps us close to him. He keeps us in his hand so that he can grasp us, so that he can love on us, so that he can pour into, so that he can motivate and shield us and be that buckler that we need. And so our lesson for today, or the message for today, is none other than the ugly. And so what that means is there are parts that you don't get to see. There are parts that most people don't talk about. There are parts that people aren't forthcoming or willing to share with you a lot of the times. Don't disregard the ugly parts, because the ugly parts are the pieces that are going to bring together all of those broken pieces that our Father in heaven takes his hand and he orchestrates into a beautiful masterpiece. And so those ugly parts that you don't see and that they don't mention are valid pieces to the story. It's valid pieces to you being elevated. It's valid pieces to you being graduated. It's valid pieces to you being that close to your breakthrough. It's a valid piece. And so the different people that he brought to mind were, first and foremost, Peter. Peter doubted, and then he sang. But, see that but? He was rescued. What areas are you doubting? What areas are you doubting or lacking faith in? I just released a message about faith and keeping the faith and not relying on things that we try to do in our own strength instead of giving it to our Father in heaven. Just as I mentioned in that video, David, he hid in caves even though he was anointed to be a king, and even though he slew Goliath. And so even David had a lack of faith because he was fearful. He was fearful that he feared for his life. He was hiding from Saul. It was a hit on his life. And so we know that a lot of the times these are the parts that people don't talk about. These are the parts that they leave out when it comes to mentioning the greats. And so Peter, he doubted and he sang. What areas are you doubting? What areas are you lacking faith in? But you have to remember that our Heavenly Father can supply and deliver you from these areas. So what are these areas that you're discouraged in? Write them down and pray over them, guys. And so the second person was Sarah. Sarah laughed in her disbelief as she was told that she was going to bear a child in her later ages. She was in her 70s and she was giving birth to her first child. This is not like someone that's had 3 or 4 kids and then, you decide that you want another one down the line. No, that's not the case. She was actually without any children. And then these angels are in her presence and she's entertaining them and hosting them. And then they give her this message and say, you're going to be able to bring forth this child that I spoke to your husband about all these years ago. Because she'd given up hope. She tried to do things by her own strength and might. And that is how Ishmael was born. This is how Ishmael was born. And so it created a rift between her and her relationship, between her maidservant, who she allowed to sleep with her husband and father a child because she knew that her husband wanted a child, and she was being impatient. She was being impatient because it was not happening on her own timing. We have to be careful of that. When we get outside of our own desires and allow our Father in heaven to do it the way that he's instructed and written it or just orchestrated it, that's when things flow. And so instead of creating a rift or a problematic area or occurrence in this particular situation or circumstance, she was called to just be patient and wait. Not to sit here and think that she was, that our Father in heaven wasn't going to honor that which he set forth and had already shared. If he spoke it, then it's going to come to pass. If he's promised it, then it's not going to return to him void. It's going to take place. And so what areas are you in disbelief? What areas are clouding your call and that which has already been spoken over your life? In whatever area. What areas? Examine this and dissect it, because these are the ugly parts that nobody wants to share. myself included. I share my testament, but I'm being called to share it in a greater way. And up to this point, I haven't had to do it in a public sense. I haven't had to do it in a sense that's going to impact a lot of people at one time. But in me walking my journey and sharing these detailed pieces and parts of me, it's heavily relying on my testament to share with you guys, and the messages that he allows me to share with you guys for your betterment. So what are these areas of disbelief? Where do you need him to show up? And then the next person that was brought to mind was Jonah. We all know Jonah. Jonah ran. Jonah was a runner. Jonah was a track star. Jonah left. And so Jonah, instead of doing what he was instructed to do, and a lot of people don't understand the account of Jonah and why it was that he chose to run, because Jonah was a very wealthy man. Like when you go back and you read this book, Jonah was a very wealthy man. He was a very wealthy man of our Father in heaven. He did his Father's business. And so in preaching and teaching and ministering and going on assignment here and there, he was obedient until he was asked to go to this town where he could not see why he would be sent into a town where they were actually murdering people. They were murdering preachers. They were murdering prophets. They were murdering Christians. And so all of these different things he considered. And I released a message about that previously, but sometimes the consideration of what you see versus what you're being called to is greater. It's greater. So his impact was far beyond that which he could fathom or he could even comprehend, because he wasn't given all of those pieces. And we talk about that a lot in the previous messages about how sometimes you're called to things, but you don't have the end result. Sometimes you're called to places and you don't know what it's going to be like, but your instruction is to go. And so Jonah's instruction was none other than that. Go. And when he told him to go, he gave him an assignment, but he didn't know how that was going to look, because you're sending me into a place where I know that they're putting hits out for these type of people that are doing this work that you're calling me to. So instead, I'm going to get in here and I'm going to go the opposite direction, and I'm going to get as far away from the assignment and the instruction as if, because now he's bringing me to remember that this particular part of scripture teaches us that when he ran, even though you thought you could run away, you're a prophet. So you hear and you have a deeper connection with our Father. So you thinking that you could run or hide from our Father in heaven, did you really think it was going to work, Jonah? But many times we act like Jonah. We do. We act like Jonah. We act as though he's not going to find out that we're hiding from the assignment, that we're running from the assignment, that we're not going to do exactly what he wants us to do, how he instructs us to do it. And so what areas he, this is a person of his caliber with a relationship, a solid relationship. Because like I said, he was favored and he was very wealthy. He was well taken care of. And so why would you have any reason to doubt that if he's calling you to this assignment, just like all the other assignments, he's going to care for you? But Jonah didn't have that mindset. Jonah ran, and Nineveh, like I said, was a cutthroat town, and a man of his caliber would typically have been chewed up, killed, murdered, done. Like you entered the town and you're toast. And so he tried to do things his way, guys. He tried to do things his way, and he ended up being swallowed up by a big fish. Doesn't say it was whale. It says big fish. People associated with whale. I don't know if it was whale. I just know it was big fish. You have fish that are about the size of whale, so big fish. 3 whole days and 3 nights. But then, just like with Peter, he was rescued. But he was rescued through praying. He prayed. And so as he prayed and sought the forgiveness, this is what allowed him to have that come around full circle moment. And so it's difficult for us to fathom a lot of times that the ugly parts are what actually makes the story so beautiful when it comes to full circle. When it completes that whole circle, at that closure, you see the importance of the ugly parts. And so he prayed. And so I'm encouraging you guys to read all of the account in Jonah. It's only 4 chapters. It's a short book. So read it if you haven't taken time to do that. And go back and read about Sarah as well in the book of Genesis. Her account with her husband Abraham, and how all of these different things she had to face and endure, and how it created problematic areas in her life when she tried to do things by her own will and her own might. And so just like all who came and who've gone before us, guys, we have emotions. You and I have emotions, and sometimes we run and we ruin the things that we could have had by having an easy and straightforward assignment, and we make it tedious. We make it very heavy. We make it very stressful, when all we had to do was show up and do it exactly as we were instructed. And so just be mindful of the ugly pieces. It doesn't have to be a continuation in your journey. It doesn't have to be a continuation in this chapter. It doesn't have to be a continuation over into next seasons, the new seasons that you're entering into. And so, sometimes we run high, but we have to keep the faith. We have to keep the faith and remember that the enemy shall not prevail. And so that's my message, guys. The ugly parts are important. They're just as important as all of those beautiful pieces that we share with people. And in you sharing, you're building, you're encouraging, you're uplifting, and you're helping someone else through their circumstance. And so, guys, that's my message for today. What things do you need to get right? Seek him about it. He always has an answer. It's nothing too big or too small. And so, as always, guys, I pray for you guys before you get here. As always, take this message back to our Father in heaven and ask him what it is he desires you to get from it. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next message. Take care.